The information shared on this program is for general informational purposes only. It is not intended as legal, tax, investment, or other professional advice, nor as a recommendation of any specific investment product or financial instrument. Always consult your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant regarding your own situation. All client reviews or spotlight segments are unpaid testimonials from current clients of Tony Walker Financial. Individual experiences will vary, are not representative of all clients, and are not a guarantee of future results or success.
Wondering why more and more savers are less and less confident about their retirement? Me too.
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money. The Worry-Free Retirement with your host, six-time author and fiduciary, Tony Walker.
The word for the day is confidence. It's an interesting concept to be confident in something because confidence usually implies that one is thinking about the future and the prospects of something happening in it. Our process here at Tony Walker Financial, we refer to this as the Worry-Free Retirement process, and it's all about this theory that the more confident a saver is about their money and their plans for it, the more confident they will be about the future and, of course, the idea of their money lasting as long as they do. Yet, according to more and more studies I'm seeing, that's not the case. No, instead of feeling more confident about the prospects of a worry-free retirement, more and more savers are less confident than ever before. The reason? Well, we're going to find out. So welcome, folks, to the Worry-Free Retirement. And yes, I am that little man in the sweater vest, confidence-building specialist, and the world's friendliest financial fiduciary, Tony Walker. So let's take a deeper dive into this article providing results of a recent survey to see just how confident Americans are about their retirement. And note, of all the stats that jump off the page to me is this one. 1/3, 34%, of participants feel very likely to achieve their savings goals. Now listen, that is down from 43% just a year ago. In other words, according to the world of Tony, this tells me that more and more savers are not more confident about their financial future, but less confident. The study also revealed that on average, workers expect to retire at age 66 and believe they will need $1.6 million saved, as well as estimating that their savings will only last about 22 years, which to me, as someone who has specialized in retirement planning longer than most, summarizes what I've been saying for years, and that is this. Without some form of guaranteed lifetime income retirement, something we call
mailbox money,
people will spend less in retirement because of this fear of one day thinking they might run out of money. This goofy idea of needing some magic number saved for retirement, which just a few short months ago was $1.4 million, for some reason is now $1.6 million, which leads this little man in a sweater vest to arrive at the following conclusion. Most savers are drinking from the wrong trough and need to step back and consider drinking from another one. That's our process, the Worry-Free Retirement. And it's a process that is based on the fact that most savers will need less saved for retirement than they think. And yes, there is a way to guarantee that they won't run out of money. So how do we create so much confidence for our clients in their retirement? Well, according to the many 5-star reviews you can look at the website at TonyWalkerFinancial.com, the confidence of our clients is not found in some arbitrary magic number, but found in a well-thought-out process that includes safety, security, and the ability to put in place investments that guarantee you won't run out of money. So if you're like the growing number of savers who are less confident about retirement, stay tuned as I share with you how we at Tony Walker Financial help so many savers worry less about money. We'll be right back.
Here's another Tony Walker Financial 5-star review from Kim McKinney. When my husband decided to retire, we didn't have a plan. We meet with Tony Walker at his Bowling Green office. His staff was very polite and was very helpful in many ways while we waited for Tony to walk us through the plan he came up with for us. My husband and I left Tony's office feeling like we made the best decision and was ready to enjoy our retirement. To read this and other 5-star reviews, just log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com.
At Tony Walker Financial, we're more than just annuities.
With a written retirement game plan, Charles Schwab Investments, and tax smart planning, we help you turn savings into a strategy. Learn more at TonyWalkerFinancial.com, and let's get started.
I'm visiting with Heather Hughes, our in-house fiduciary, lead fiduciary as I call it, in Bowling Green. And people might say, what's a lead fiduciary, Tony? Well, besides myself being a fiduciary, we have 4 full-time fiduciaries. Heather ultimately makes most of the decisions if I'm out, if there's major decisions. And also she would be next in line if something happened to me. Because of our structure, we're so different than other firms. We don't assign advisors to clients. The game plan rules the roost here. Our job is to keep that game plan up to date and make sure our clients remain worry-free. But we do have a business continuation plan in place. So that's why I'm talking a lot with Heather here lately, and just all the changes we have going through. A lot of times I'll run by some of these wild ideas I've got in my mind, Heather, just as a template and make sure it's not too off-kilter. But, you know, a couple of years ago, we love annuities. The one drawback we've seen over the years with annuities is sometimes you get into these annuities, they may not be performing as we had hoped, but we kind of get stuck in them because of surrender charges. So we had been researching for a couple of years these idea of fee-based annuities, specifically RILAs. And I guess now that we're experimenting with them, I really like the idea of it, but why are these RILAs on a fee-based annuity basis, why are they so flexible when it comes to retirement planning, and why do we like these products to put them sometimes in the mix?
Right. So the RILAs, which stands for Registered Index-Linked Annuities, are kind of the best of both worlds because you can still get at least a amount of safety that like a fixed indexed annuity would offer. Most of these do have buffers that you can choose from, which basically gives you a little bit of a stop loss on any kind of volatile market, big downturns, that kind of thing. Also gives you options for additional growth that sometimes the caps and the participation rates on a fixed indexed annuity can't really meet. But then it's also fairly liquid. So the RILAs that we use typically either don't have a surrender charge, so you have no limit on what you can take out, or they may have a minimal one for the first few years. So it gives you a lot of flexibility because you've got the versatility of maybe getting a little bit higher return than you normally would through a fixed indexed annuity, and the liquidity that you may need, but you're not wanting to be 100% in the market.
And when we say fees, I know the old variable annuities, sometimes they would get way up there, 3.5%, 4.5%. We're only talking about roughly a 1% fee. So if you hear of annuities with fees, these are not the old variable annuities. So speak to that. And again, that fee is really the trade-off for the flexibility and the liquidity feature versus when we get a commission. Yeah, that's nice. The client doesn't pay it out of pocket. But we ran into this the other day. I had a case, a gentleman came in, and out of the blue, I looked at the plan we had, Heather. He had no intention of buying a house. You know how I say things change. And he saw the house of his dreams. It was a neighbor. It wasn't an expensive home. He wanted to pay cash, right? He's a saver. And he said, I need enough money to pay for this. Well, by the time we would pay taxes and surrender the annuity we had set aside for long term, it was going to really be difficult. But if we'd had some of that money in a RILA, in that example, we could have gotten out of that without any penalty to do what he wanted. So speak to the fact that people do need to be careful rushing out and putting all of their money into annuities. We still see that, and what the dangers of that is with the traditional commissionable annuity in terms of surrender charges.
Absolutely. Well, first off, don't buy an annuity unless you have a plan for what you're going to do with that annuity. Don't just chase rates.
Or bonuses. We're seeing that. Yeah.
Because you've got to have an idea of how you're planning on using this money. Granted, in that example, it changed, but you need to definitely have a plan. It's like, okay, I may be buying a house in 2 years. Well, if that's the case, then the RILA is going to be a much more feasible option for you versus a 10 or some of these really big bonus annuities that we see out there. They're, 15.
Oh, you get hammered if you get out of those things early.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and you mentioned the fee. So the fee is just an advisory fee that, that's how we get compensated. So we are looking at those annuities, monitoring those, making investment, suggestions as the years go on. And, kind of like a fixed indexed annuity, you have an annual window where you can switch up the investment options, and we take a look at those. And obviously advise accordingly.
So I guess in summary on annuities, even more so than we'd say 10 years ago, before you rush out and buy any annuity, what would you tell people, Heather?
Talk to us.
Hey folks, Tony Walker with a quick hitter here. You know, we get questions all the time about retirement, and we're happy to answer those. Some people go to the website at TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Some people simply call us. That number's 877-499-9255. But here's a newbie. I love this. If you have a question for me, Tony Walker, why don't you just text it to me? Let me give you that number right now. The text number for questions for Tony is 502-429-3416. Let me repeat that. Text Tony your question on retirement, whether you're retired or nearing retirement, 502-429-3416. Wondering how much money you'll need to retire? Probably a lot less than you think. I'm retirement specialist Tony Walker, and I've helped thousands of savers determine when to retire and how much money they'll need in retirement, and I can help you too. To meet in person at no cost or obligation, let me invite you to log on right now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com or call the toll-free number at 877-499-9255. We're in the Bowling Green office talking to Caitlin Decker, and Caitlin is in charge of a lot of our service work, particularly in the annuity department. So, Caitlin, I think you had a recent mission statement moment as well for one of our clients.
Yes, I did, Tony. I had a client that has friends with 401ks, and they noticed their payments were going down because of the market crash, and he was very confident that his annuity payments would not change because he was set up for the lifetime income payments.
Stay tuned for more mission statement moments. You're listening to The Worry-Free Retirement with Tony Walker.
Faster than a speeding bullet. More powerful than a locomotive. Able to leap tall buildings at a single bound. Look, up in the sky. It's a bird.
It's a plane.
It's
A little man in a sweater vest? Hey, this is your roving reporter, Simeon. I'm kind of the new guy on the block, and I recently had a question come up. I said, every superhero has an origin story. You know, there was a moment when Bruce Wayne became Batman, and we know how Superman came from Krypton in a spaceship, and that was his start. And, you know, and the Flash had chemicals spilling on him. And, you know, but we got all of these superheroes. And then, you know, I'm here at Tony Walker Financial, and we have, I guess you would call him a superhero in the financial world, Tony Walker, and his signature thing is not a red cape or a mask, it's a sweater vest. And it's like, you know, and I'm sitting here with Tony right now on the Shelbyville Road office, and I just have to ask Tony, what is the origin story of that sweater vest? I know that there are probably thousands of people that have seen you on TV and heard you on the radio, and you're always talking about the sweater vest. But what is the origin story behind that?
Oh, yeah. So the little man in the sweater vest, where did that start? And when you came to the office and you said you wanted to ask me this question for the radio show, and I thought, Stephen, that's a really good question. And I had to really go back in my mind's eye because, back in the day when I first started the TV show Your Money Matters, back in the 90s, it was all suit and tie. And I think what happened was there was a large network station in Louisville. In 2007, I got a gig on there as their local retirement specialist. So every Monday, I would go on the station, and for some reason, I decided, you know what, I just don't want to wear a suit and tie on the TV. I'd done that for years. I'm just going to put on, and I didn't want to just wear a shirt. So I had an extra sweater vest, and I think that's the only thing I can remember. For whatever reason, I put it on. It just felt normal, just real comfortable. It was a live call-in show, so I knew people would just be calling in. I wanted to be casual. And it just felt normal. And from that day forward, I don't think I've ever worn a coat and tie again to work for any reason. So it just kind of caught on. And now today, I used to have green ones, plaid ones, red ones, orange ones. I got to where I had all these different colors. Then I went to just solid black. But to this day, I probably have 15 sweater vests because I've got them in different locations. And in case I need one, I'll grab one. But Yeah, the little man in the sweater vest, I think that's where that really started, was on a local network TV show, live call-in show, where I just wanted to be a little more casual. And now the only thing I will say, Simeon, yesterday I had to go out and run an errand. It was 90 degrees, and I've got this sweater vest on, running between cars and errands. I probably look like a complete idiot out 90-degree temperatures.
Yeah. So have you had any unusual moments with the sweater?
Oh, gosh.
So it's like, well, now when you're out in public, do you wear the sweater vest?
I try not to, but it's funny you mentioned that, because I'm out in Bowling Green and Louisville, both locations, a lot. And I'm not saying I'm well recognized, but, I have been on TV a lot. But the other day, you mentioned that, the other day I was invited to a retirement party. Well, I left after work. I thought, it's at a restaurant. I'll just leave my sweater vest on. Off I go. So normally I'm not out in public with this thing on. So I walk into the restaurant. I can see a few people kind of looking funny, like maybe they recognize me.
Yeah.
One guy that I met hollered out. He said, "There you are." Turned around on the TV monitor in the restaurant. One of my commercials came on. People are cracking up. So that's not the end of it, Simeon. So where I was over at Norton Commons at this restaurant, Gustavo's, okay? So I'm walking back to my car. I'm just parked on the street. Have you ever been over there to Norton Commons?
Yeah, yeah.
Just side streets everywhere. And I'm walking, and I see an elderly gentleman walking a small dog. And you know how I like animals. So as I get closer, he kind of nods at me, but he turns right to walk up his steps to go into his condo. Well, the dog's just wagging its little tail, looking at me and trying to pull on the leash, and he's kind of pulling on it. When I'm getting close to the dog, all of a sudden the collar pops off. So he doesn't notice, though. It's funny. He's fooling with his keys, and he's holding this leash with no dog, and the dog runs to me. I scoop it up, and I said, "Sir, here's your dog." And he looks at me, and I kid you not, he looks at me. We hadn't acknowledged each other. Looks at me and goes, "I guess, Tony, you'll do anything for new clients, won't you?"
I guess the dog must have seen the Tony Baloney cartoon, said, this guy likes dogs. Well, that's amazing. So it's just like you don the sweater vest and you conquer and you do, you're the superhero, man. It's just great. So thanks, Tony.
Oh, thank you, Simeon. It's been fun.
My pleasure.
So you've worked 30 or 40 years slaving away at work so you can save away money into your 401k, and now you arrive at the biggest financial decision you're ever going to make: where to invest your 401k plan. Think about it. For all these years, you've had a steady paycheck, compliments from your employer for all of your hard work that you dedicated to them. But now, all of a sudden, you've got to figure out how to replace that paycheck with the money you've been saving. No wonder you're worried about what to do and who to trust with that money, which is why we at Tony Walker Financial are providing a brand new free service called the 10-Minute Fiduciary Phone Call. And here's how simple it is to learn more about our services and our 401k rollover process. First, just log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Once there, click on the Let's Get Started button. You'll be taken to a page. Confidentially, you can fill out your information on the screen and then click below the best way for us to speak together. It could either be myself or one of our other trained fiduciaries. It's that easy. So what are you waiting for? Before you make a rash decision and blindly turn your money over to a complete stranger to invest, consider a name and a firm you can trust, Tony Walker Financial. And, oh, by the way, if you like, you can give us a call to speak to us at any time by phone by simply calling 877-499-9255. Well, with us via phone is an attorney we refer a lot of business to here in the Louisville area, Mr. Norm Graham, and specifically, we're talking a lot about durable powers of attorney lately. And Norm, you know from working with us that we really like for our clients to have a durable power of attorney. So if you would, please just explain what is a durable power of attorney, the pros and cons of them, and who should consider getting one.
Sure. So a power of attorney is a document that allows you to nominate another person to act on your behalf with whoever receives a copy of that power of attorney, such as your investment advisor. The durable part means that If you become disabled, then in that case, the power of attorney remains in effect, because the law assumes that when you become disabled, then obviously you don't have the capacity to revoke the power of attorney anymore. So legally, it's revoked. But if it has that magic word durable in it, that means it remains in effect if you become disabled.
So we really suggest these a lot. And so again, speak exactly to the pros. Why should someone consider one? And then potentially, are there any concerns you might have for these?
Sure. So the number one, there's two reasons. One may be just for convenience, because it allows whoever holds your power of attorney to converse with your investment advisor, accountants, bank, whomever, about your investments and assets and all that kind of stuff, because your investment advisor won't talk to you or won't talk to the person who holds the power of attorney unless that power of attorney is on file with them. And that can be very helpful, particularly if an adult child is helping, recommend investments or whatever. The investment advisor needs to have that power of attorney. Honestly, if I have seen situations in attorney where sometimes the power of attorney is misused, and sometimes that's not necessarily intentional. Dad may be elderly, but he knows he wants to own whatever. But son thinks that's, a bad idea, so changes his investments, and Dad gets mad. That happens. And so often for younger older people, and, I consider younger like 60, maybe even 70, maybe a power of attorney is not necessary. But, if a person is in their mid-70s or 80s and really needs assistance from whoever has their power of attorney to make investment decisions, then it's a good idea. But, or if you're younger, like 50, and you're married and you want your spouse to be able to converse with, your investment advisor or whatever, then you want a power of attorney. But I have seen powers of attorney misused where, there are 4 children and one of them, uses the power of attorney to change the beneficiaries to them. And so you have to be careful. And, that's not something that's fun to talk about, but I'm an attorney. I've seen it.
Okay, Norm, so we talked about the first type of power of attorney, and we're seeing more and more of this springing power of attorney. And I really like this concept because I guess my concern, Norm, what if you got a durable power of attorney and, you just decide to change investments and the mom or dad that you've got the power of attorney on is perfectly healthy and they don't even know you're doing that, I guess. So what would the springing power of attorney do to help protect that person from somebody just randomly changing their investments?
Well, the springing power of attorney normally comes into effect like if your doctor says writes a letter that you're disabled, then the person who holds the power of attorney can use it and make investment decisions at that time. And maybe your circumstances have changed at that time, so changing investments is a reasonable thing. But until that time, the primary person has exclusive right to make those decisions.
Well, Norm, we appreciate your time. We've been talking with Norm Graham, an attorney in Louisville, Kentucky, and you are listening to The Worry-Free Retirement. We'll be right back.
As we near the end of our Live Well, Die Broke journey, Tony reminds us as we go through this life that it's okay to give yourself permission to enjoy some of the simple pleasures. In Chapter 8, Life's Too Short to Eat Cheap Bacon.
Do you like bacon? Bacon, that's right, bacon, B-A-C-O-N. I love bacon. In fact, one of the funniest comedians out there, Jim Gaffigan, he loves bacon too.
You want to know how good bacon is? To improve other food, they wrap it in bacon.
You know, as growing up as a youngster, our family didn't have a lot of money, but one thing my parents always did is made sure before we ran off to school, my mom would always fix us bacon and eggs. And to this day, whenever I visit my mom in the same little house I grew up in Lexington, Kentucky, if I ever spend the night there, guess what happens when I wake up in the morning, folks? That's right, there they are, bacon and eggs. But not just any bacon. You see, my mom, who doesn't have a lot of money, will never cut corners on bacon. In fact, as she anxiously waits for me to take that first bite of that piece of bacon, she always asks, "How's the bacon?" And guess what? When it comes to bacon, although my mom, again, doesn't have a lot of money, she does not shortcut the bacon. In other words, she will spend good money as long as it's good bacon.
Yay, bacon!
So I got to thinking about this. Why would my mom, who doesn't have a lot of money, spend so much money on good bacon? Well, first of all, it's something she can spend a lot of money on. In fact, in a book I read years ago called Trading Up, a gentleman did a survey on why people spend so much money on a boring cup of coffee. Think about it. You know, some of these lattes and stuff people spend money on, $7, $8 for a cup of coffee. My granddad would roll over in his grave if he knew what people were spending money on. This guy's theory was the reason they're spending money is they want to spend money on something they can afford to enjoy. And while $7 or $15 for a pound of bacon sounds expensive, it is the least affordable, and it feels like you're enjoying something and kind of splurging on that particular item that you enjoy. So we're indulging in good pleasures, and we're just indulging, in my mom's case, in a pleasure that she can afford, which is a really good pound of bacon. I also had a couple that, another story in line with where we're going with this. Hang in there, folks. This couple always traveled overseas and took these really, really nice cruises, these small cruises that had like 100 people on board. And I commented once, I said, "Boy, I bet you're spending a lot of money on those." And they laughed and they said, "Oh yeah, they're pretty expensive." And I said, "Well, by the time you add that into the mix with your first class tickets, what would you say it cost you?" And they paused and they looked at me and they went, "First class tickets, what are you talking about?" And I said, "Well, I'm just assuming here. If you go on a first-class voyage, I'm assuming you're going to splurge with first-class tickets." And they looked at me and they said, "Tony, do you know how much first-class tickets cost?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And I said, I'll call them the Joneses. I said, "Mr. and Mrs. Jones, do you realize you have plenty of money to afford a first-class ticket to fly overseas? And tell me where I'm confused, but you've got a first-class cruise and you're flying coach. I don't get it." They looked at each other. They didn't say anything. We concluded the meeting with some other details. And then a couple of months later, they called me and they said, "Tony, guess what?" I said, "What?" They said, "We flew first class on our last cruise." And I said, "How'd you like it?" And they laughed. They said, "We'll never go back to coach." So maybe that's you right now. You know, whether it's a $15 pound of bacon or flying first class, you need to understand that this money is nothing more than a commodity, nothing more than a tool. There's nothing sacred about it. And maybe you need to get off the guilt trip gospel and enjoy this money a little bit more. So here's what I would suggest you do. Before you just rush out and be a spendthrift and start blowing money, why don't you meet with somebody who's been doing this longer than most, someone who's met in person with more than 20,000 savers. We have more than 4,000 clients, most of whom are retired. So folks, we know this world of spending and enjoying your money very well, and we would love to talk to you about how you too can enjoy your money. To set up a free phone call with me, Tony Walker, it's easy to do. Just log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com, TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Click on that Talk to Tony button. We'll arrange that phone call, and then if it merits, I'm going to meet with you in person to lay out that free proprietary game plan that only Tony Walker Financial offers. Internet not your thing? No biggie. Call us 24/7. Our toll-free number is 877-499-9255.
To learn more about Live Well, Die Broke, visit TonyWalkerFinancial.com. While there, you can listen to the audiobook version absolutely free. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com.
Well, folks, that's all the time we have today. But you remember, between now and next week, if all else fails, you be worry-free and you make it a good one.